You've started playing a dating sim and you have to choose between a myriad of anime girls. You look at all of them and you're truly at a crossroads. Do you choose the cutest one? The smartest one? The kindest one? Or maybe you choose the one that the game tells you to choose? No matter which one you choose, we're going to get to the bottom of why you made that decision and why you make almost every decision that you do. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Fireside Chat. This is a rather special one, as you may have seen in the title and description, because it was written by the newest member of the Pyrember Studios family, Tessa. She works with Cell and I to generate Fireside Chat ideas, and has held an integral role in organizing our ideas into coherent plans for this channel. That being said, this is the very first Fireside Chat written by her. The topic, the psychology of choice. Throughout this video, we'll talk about ideas that have a major impact on your choices. Extension of persona, self-image, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, marginal utility, herd mentality, status quo bias, choice presentation, and more. I've got to say, Tessa did an amazing job with this script and put a lot of research into it. Now, I present you with a choice. Will you watch this video, or will you continue to stay in the dark? Every type of video game is chock full of choices. At the very beginning of most games, the player is presented with a large choice that, in most instances, won't affect the character later in the game. Chances are, giving your character brown hair instead of black hair won't change your stats in a video game. So how do we make aesthetic-based decisions? It really depends on the choice that a game presents to you. If you get to create your own character, you'll likely create a character that looks like yourself, or an idealized version of yourself. This is a pattern that is exemplified daily. When we choose clothing, we'll choose an outfit that we feel represents us in some way. This is called an extension of persona. We'll choose an outwards appearance that we feel reflects us in some way. This is also evident when we are given a set of characters to choose from. We'll often try to choose the character that best reflects us. Like when you first play Mario Kart, you're likely to choose a character that you can relate to, even if we know that there's no particular advantage to using a character that we feel portrays us. Most of the decisions that we make for aesthetic reasons are, in fact, based on extending our persona to the character that we play, whether we do so to relate to the character, or if we do so to show other players what we look like. We, as players, tend to try to extend our personas when choosing an outward appearance, whether it be clothing or a character choice that we think portrays us. But extending our personalities isn't the only way that self-image affects our aesthetic choices in games. Sometimes, players, such as 8-year-olds with their mom's credit card number, will buy a skin that everyone knows is very expensive, even if it has no particularly good stats when applied to the item itself. The 8-year-old made the choice to use that skin just because they thought it would make them seem cooler, or like they knew what they were doing when playing the game. They bought the item just so they could maintain their self-image. We will often buy stuff that we think makes us look cool in some way because we want others to think that we're cool. Whether or not we buy a new cool skin in CSGO, or if we spend money on a starter pack for a game that you definitely do not need a starter pack for, we'll make aesthetic-based choices to make us seem like we're important or worth befriending in some way. Or we'll make choices that truly show who we are as people to the other players of the game, based on our outwards appearances. When you think of choices in gaming, you most likely think of RPGs, as that's when you make the most conscious decisions. But you're always making decisions. Like right now, you probably have something more important to do, but you instead decided to watch the video. Thank you. Yes, the more common case of choice in video games are dating sims or adventure games, but we are always making choices. Let's say you're playing a survival game. What do you do first? Chances are you'll try to get the resources that you need to survive, such as food and water, a place to rest, and in some cases, a heat source. Then you'll likely get resources to build a good house, or you'll find a good house that you can steal from an NPC. After this is where things get slightly cloudy. At this point, you might try to get an animal companion to help you get more resources or to fight off things. Or, in some games, you'll build relationships with other characters. Sometimes the game doesn't allow that, so you just gain a lot of resources. Then, after you've done all of that, you'll try to become the best you can be in the game and try to finish the game. Whether it's defeating the end boss or surviving for as long as you can, you try to win. Let's say you finish the game. What's your next step? If you liked the game, your next step is probably to get all of the accomplishments and find all of the endings or secrets in the game. And then, after making a deep and kind of creepy emotional attachment to the game, it's finally done. It's over. But why do we follow this pattern? Why do we follow a step-by-step process to find success? The answer is pretty simple, actually. It's because we prioritize based on our needs as humans. It can easily be summed up by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Based on this very important triangle, we can learn about why humans make the choices that they do. According to the hierarchy of needs, we basically cover our needs step by step, starting with the basic needs, then psychological needs, then self-fulfillment needs. One of the more obvious factors of making a choice is based on what will give us the best possible outcome. Let's say you're playing a game and you're presented with 3 options. A box with $100, a box with $1,000, or a box with $1 million. Which one are you going to choose? The answer is pretty simple. You're going to choose the box with $1 million because you will gain the most from choosing that. This theory is summed up by an economic term called marginal utility, which suggests that we make every choice we make based on what will have the most benefit. This plays into a lot, not all, of the decisions that we make. Let's say that you're playing a dating sim and you're pursuing the token smart girl character. If you're given an option of choosing an eloquently put pickup line or a complete mess of a phrase, you're going to choose the eloquent line because you know that that'll have the best outcome. Any psychology nerds out there will know that Pascal's wager is a test of marginal utility. Pascal's wager is a calculation of whether or not to believe in a god or higher being. Pascal thought that you had more to gain from believing in a higher being, pleasing a being that would be a key to your existence and afterlife, than you had to gain from not believing, which would potentially anger said higher being. Believing in a higher being would, in fact, garner a reward at some point, while not believing does not have any reward. Marginal utility is easily the more evident part of making choices. If you ask almost anyone what their main decision-making element is, they will likely say self-benefit. However, human beings are very rarely rational enough to make all decisions based on what has a positive outcome. Now, picture this. You're playing a game that has 3 different routes. All of your friends have played the game, and almost every single one of them took route number 2. They don't spoil the route for you, but they all tell you to take that specific route. Now, chances are you'll do route number 2, and maybe you'll go back and do the other 2 later. This is because of herd mentality, which is when we make the same choice as our peers to fit into the group. Herd mentality isn't always as predominant in video games because our peers don't always have an influence on what choices we make in a video game. But, as Stanley Parable points out, sometimes we get made fun of for choosing the quote-unquote wrong route in a video game, which will later motivate us to conform to what our peer group does in the game. Going back to the whole self-image part of this video, herd mentality is often used as a way to uphold our self-image, as we don't want our peers to see us in a different light, just because we chose the road less traveled by. Another factor that plays into decision-making is status quo bias. Status quo bias is the tendency to make choices based on what's familiar to us, and is based on risk aversion. In essence, it states that we're most likely to choose something we're familiar with, even if the other choice could offer a greater marginal utility. See? That word's important. If you're playing a game and you take specific series of steps to start off the game every time you play, and that process has worked every time, it's likely that you'll stick with the series of steps, even if following a different process could have a better outcome. Status quo bias can also be explained in terms of loss aversion, in which we as humans feel we have more to lose than we have to gain by the change. This is because, just like High School Musical states, we tend to stick to the stuff we know. This factor usually plays into any feature of a game in which you play with chance. If in a game you main a character just because you know they're efficient, and you don't really explore other characters, then you're being affected by status quo bias. The other characters could be easier to play as, or you could be better as a healer than a defender, or you could be more likely to understand the gameplay as a different character, but you don't because you didn't explore the other characters. Sometimes in games, the choices are presented in a way that obviously connotes the choices. This means that they purposely make a choice feel or seem a certain way. Like when you try to choose to hang out with one character, but the game drags the mouse to a different character, and then when you eventually manage to make it choose the character you want, you're met with a creepy image, and you're forced to choose the different character. This is a very unsubtle, but still evident example of choice presentation. Choice presentation is one of many examples of how easily manipulated the human mind is. In essence, choice presentation is a theory that asks about how an option is presented. One of the examples is the subtle phrasing of a closed question in a referendum has been found to affect people's choices. This means that in a political situation, the phrasing of a question will change the outcome of the vote. In games, especially RPGs, this is typically evident when the wrong choice is presented in a bad light. For example, some dating sims will present a dialogue option with a spelling error to try to persuade you not to choose that option. This can also be seen as an example of nudge theory, in which a person can be pushed in the right direction or into making a certain choice based on subtle signs. Now, I know what you're thinking. Does all of this play into the decisions we make in video games? The answer is yes. All of this and so much more plays into decision making. Pinpointing the exact factor that plays into decision making is borderline impossible, as so much goes into singular decisions that we make. If you're playing a dating sim and you choose one character, usually there's a lot more than just aesthetic-based decision making going on when you choose the character. If you're playing a combat game and you choose your fighter, chances are you didn't just decide that today was a Goro day instead of a Kano day. There are so many factors that play into choices, to the point where pinpointing our justification for choices is difficult. So next time you make a decision, whether it's based on self-image, an extension of your persona, marginal utility, herd mentality, status quo bias, choice presentation, nudge theory, or some other element that I didn't cover, hopefully you'll be able to look back and realize exactly what's going on when you're leaning toward one decision over another. And with that, remember, we didn't start the fire, we just keep it burning. Thanks for watching. If you liked today's very special episode, you have the choice to leave a like. You also have the choice to subscribe or click the bell to get notifications. Let us know in the comments section what you think weighs most heavily on your decisions. I want to personally thank Tessa for writing the script today, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from her in the future. As always, you have the choice to leave feedback and let us know if you want to see more videos written by Tessa.